Today in math intervention, we're going to be looking at domain and range. I know this is something that we talked about first semester, but it's always nice to review, especially since it'll be coming up again in another couple weeks. Today's objective is Kipsters will be able to identify the domain and range from points, so like at the bottom, a table, a mapping diagram, or points on a graph. Our CFS is we always want to create a table first, then identify the domain, which is our x values, then identify the range, which is any of our y values from our points. So we're going to go through a couple of examples really quick, just to give you a feel for how it would look if I'm looking at a graph, a mapping diagram, points, or a table. So our first example here, we have separate points on a graph. They're not connected by any lines. So we're going to take those points and make a table. So let's see. Remember, x always comes first. So side to side, -3, comma -2. So I can put that in my table. If I go over, this is in between 2 and 3, so I'd maybe say 2.5, and then down 1, so -1. This is in between, let's see, I go side to side, 0, and up, well, it's in between 0 and 1, so probably 0.5. Over 2, up 3. I stopped adding it down here. 0, comma 0.5, 2, comma 3. I'm over here now, so let's see, we go back 1, so -1, and up 1, 2, 3. So -1, 3. And my last point all the way up here, we go over 1 and up 5. So I should have all those points listed in my table below. Now, my next CFS is to identify the domain. So the domain is any of those values that are x values. So that's always the first number in our point. So I'm just going to list those out as I see them here. If I see any repeat numbers, I only need to write it once. So we're saying -3, 2.5, 0, 2, -1, 1. So I'm going to write those over here. 2.5, 0, 2, -1, 1. Our range is any of the y values. So I'm looking in this y column now and listing out those numbers. I see that I have a 3 and a 3. So even though I have it written twice in my table, I only need to write it once over here. So I'm going to go through -2, -1, 0.5, or half. I see 3 twice. I only need to write it once, and then 5. So my range is just listing all of the y values that I had for that table. Similarly, for my other examples here, that's all we're going to do is take our points, list the x values for our domain, the y values for our range. So if I look at this next one, A is like our x values, B is like our y values. So it already kind of has them sorted into x values and y values. Our domain is any of the x values. So that's this first bubble here. 1, 3, 5. Our range is our y values over here. It paired an x value with a y value. Instead of writing it as a point, they drew it with arrows. So this would be like 1, 2, 1, 3, 3, 4. We're just taking the y values to find our range. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So once again, domain is our x values, range is our y values. If I come down here, I have some points. Our point always goes x, y, so I can put that in a table again and easily see which ones are my x values and which point or numbers are my y values. So 0, 7, -3, 3, -9, -3, 1, -2, and 7, 7. My domain hopefully by now we're picking up. Our domain is all of our x values. So I'm looking in my x column here. 0, -3, -9, 1, 7. Our range is all of these y values here. So the first, this is our domain, is our first column. Second column is the range. So let's see, 7, 3, -3, -2. And our last point here, I see 7, and I already have a 7 at the top. So we're almost there. Last, we just have, I'll wait for the bell. Give you a second to copy that down. Last, we have a table here, so I'm given an equation. I have some x values. I need to figure out the y values, and then list the domain and range. Awesome part about this table is it already gives me the x values, and those x values mean, well, I already have the domain here. So -8, 5, 0, -1, 6. The only part we're missing is finding those y values. So I have an equation. I see x and y here. We're going to be plugging this number in to figure out what y is. So instead of x, I'm going to put in -8. And let's see, if I put this in my calculator, 9 parentheses -8 parentheses plus 5. Let's see, -72 plus 5, -68. I'm going to do the same for the other parts of my table. So I'm going to take my equation, 9. Instead of x, now I'm going to put in 5 plus 5. So 9 times 5, or 9 times 5 is 45. Plus 5 is 50. 9, instead of x, I'm putting in 0 plus 5. 9 times 0 is 0. Plus 5 is 5. 9 parentheses -1 plus 5. -9 plus 5 is -4. And my last one, 9, instead of x, I'm putting in 6. So 9 times 6 is 54, plus 5 is 59. So now that I figured out my y values, I can figure out the range, because the range is just listing all those y values. -68. Remember, if you couldn't hear over the bell, the range is just all of my y values. So -68, 50, 5, -4, and 59. I'll leave this up for a second, just in case you need it to copy down. Your page should look exactly like my page, having all of your work shown off to the side, and filling out, writing our domain and range. Not just labeling it down below, but also writing it out. Domain is this, range is that. If you're already done, you should be able to look at our vocabulary down below and fill in those 2 vocab words that we've just talked about. Domain is the blank values, and range is the blank values.